Okay, guys. So this is probably the only thing I'm gonna mention with regards to the situation with Pilk's reroll tier list. Openly, okay, I don't agree with his opinions, but that's perfectly acceptable. People don't have to agree. You also, if you disagree with someone, don't have to be disrespectful. So, whereas I respect his right to have those opinions, I don't have to agree with them. So, with that said, I feel like there's a lot of information given out in Pilk's tier list that sort of, I don't know, based on a strange rationale. And so I spent basically like an hour talking in Discord or arguing in Discord with members of my Discord about like the value of Haruhime and things like that. And in the end, Tiv originally came up with it, and then I sort of backburned it. And here is the tier list on the screen. You can see it right in front of me. To explain it, it's like literally the most simplified tier list I could probably come up with. Anything from 2020, so post 2019 onward, is at the bottom tier. So you're looking at AoE DPS units with a buff. So take Otal, for example, that's the reason he's on the screen. And I've intentionally left him at level 60 because if you pull a single copy of Otal, these are the stats you're going to get. You're still going to get an S strength stat based character. He will help you through a large amount of the story. Now, herein lies the problem. He will only help you for the majority of the story. He will not carry you through the hard mode bosses, or at least specifically certain hard mode bosses that you get rewards for defeating. So, in saying that, when it comes to beating the story mode to get the rewards, you are going to be bringing support units anyway. So, it's sort of null and void about summoning for a character that's going to DPS for you when you can literally bring a support to carry you through every single chapter until you get to the later stages, and by then you should have a team at least semi-functional and semi-able to defeat the hard mode bosses anyway. And the same can be said for a healer. And I don't know whether to actually bring up a healer, but it's the same scenario. You're going to have AoE utility. You want AoE utility. So you bring a healer, she's going to make sure you survive. But here's the thing, you don't really need a healer or much utility in terms of beating the storyline, because anything in this tier where it says any AoE DPS or healer post 2019, so 2020 and above, basically, is what I would consider. If you don't want to reroll consistently and go for the tiers above, as long as you get a DPS or a healer with some AoE skills, you're fine. You're fine. But the thing is that you're re-rolling and you're not catering towards your future goals on your account. They're going to get you through the here and now, and they won't even get you through, say, the harder bosses later on, because there's only one. You've only got one copy, the level 60. So we move up to the next tier. No, by the way, before I move on to the next tier, actually, if you are unsure whether the unit, if you don't want to re-roll for Haruhime or any of the tiers above, if you're not sure whether you have a unit that is, from 2020 or 2021 or whatever, I suggest when you get the unit, you can come into my Discord, any other Discord. There are multiple platforms to go on, or even Google the name of the unit, and you'll find out when they were released. Problem solved. A little bit of digging, and you'll get a lot of results. But jumping up, we're going to skip the OG Line for now. She has SA Gauge Charge, which is essentially going to carry you through more so events than the story. We're talking 7 zone, early record buster, not so much war game, because your early war game is just going to be a catastrophe. You'll probably get to maybe braver at max for the first month or two, but SA Gauge is still going to carry you through a lot of your events and not so much the story, because if you're bringing a support, you'll finish most of the normal story before you even get a chance to SA anyway. SA Gauge Charge, which is, we're looking at essentially what you would call A tier here, being the Wealth and the Line. I'm going to bring Wealth up specifically here, and we can have a look at him. As you can see, I don't actually have him, so we're going to leave him on level 60. He still has an S class magic stat, which is still great. He also feels the void for having an AoE DPS skill with some utility on there as well. So he will also carry you through your events like the early Record Buster, 7 Zone and things like that, as well as some bosses, I guess you could say, having some utility as well as AoE skills, as well as single target skills. But this is what we're going to grab him for. You want the increase in SA gauge charge by 33% for the entire team, as well as Dex and, oh, not so much fire attack. It depends if you actually have the fire units, but Dex definitely is going to benefit you. Story, events, 7th zone, you name it. Okay, even say your early familiar rush stages if you manage to get into a familiar so early on. The reason I say this is because with that little bit of SA gauge charge, there are a handful of units that will give you SA gauge charge, and they essentially allow you to output DPS. Now this game is all about scoring you based on your damage output more than your survivability. Herein, you need the SA gauge charge to get off more SAs, and by SAs I mean special attack. I realize when this goes on YouTube, some of you may not know the the language, and SA gauge is basically the special attack gauge. It's the little bar at the very top right hand corner of the screen. It can fill up to a maximum of 4 times. After that, you're just wasting efforts. But SA gauge is essentially going to make sure that you can output more DPS and improve your scores in the early Record Busters, and even the later Record Busters if you get some prison bonds maybe put into Wealth himself. But there's also the Line. She does exactly the same thing with an added benefit here. If I can find her, that is. Okay. I have this Line MLB, which was a huge mistake because she does no damage anyway. She does have an S rank agility stat, but she will do no damage no matter what you do for her. But you want her for this skill right here, the SA gauge charge for the whole team, as well as an increase in counter rate, crit rate, and pen rate. This basically, this whole thing is gonna, these 3 right here are gonna increase your DPS, you know, throughout the battle. And then the increase in SA gauge charge is going to allow you to get off more SAs, which essentially will allow you to get off more DPS by having more SAs. It's just a given. This is what makes having SA gauge charge so valuable, because your score will increase exponentially by having more damage output. That's just how it is, unfortunately. Survival isn't valued as much. In saying that, survival is still really important, and you lose basically 100%. I think it's 100% of your Record Buster score. If I'm wrong, someone correct me, but you will lose a large amount of your score if you get wiped before turn 15 in Record Buster. So survival is still important, but the main scoring point is your DPS. Now, I don't want to ramble on for too much, because this is the most basic reroll tier list you could probably come up against, or come up and find up against. And we're gonna talk about the Haruhime here, who is, in my opinion, still the best unit in the game. And the reasoning behind that is it doesn't matter how long it takes you to get her. You could be re-rolling for days and still not get her. But if you want to re-roll for her, the value is there. Okay, right. She's basically in at least 95 to 98% of all teams. She covers so much utility. There is not a single unit in the game that does everything that she does. And yes, sure, there's a large pool of units that you can keep constantly re-rolling your rookie gacha to get. But is the value worth? Yes. Even if you get 1 copy of her now from completing the normal story, like is it chapter 40? If you complete all 40 chapters of normal, you'll get a copy of Haruhime. Essentially, all that's done is give you 1 prison bond for her, which is 1 bond for her, sorry, which is worth. Because essentially, she will do the job for you, but for the most part, you want to get her to at least +3. Because +3, like level 72, she's going to come into a lot of mana issues, when it comes to those longer 7th zone or Record Buster fights. And when that happens, it's going to be a big pain in the ass. But the thing here is, you cannot deny the fact that she's still used in so many teams for so many reasons. Like I said, at least 98% of teams makes her that valuable. There isn't a unit that does the same as her, and even if they brought out another unit that did the same thing as her, it wouldn't depreciate her value, because she would still do it. If they brought out a second version or a similar unit to Haruhime that did basically identical things to a varying degree. She would still be used, I guarantee it, because not everyone would get the newer unit, but everyone would still have the Haruhime that they originally had. And she would still make it so that you could consistently increase your buffs and debuffs, lower enemy attack and magic attack, which, by the way, even the devs have made it so she's technically necessary. And by adding her as a reward for completing the entire normal story, it's them admitting that she is necessary to complete the end game content. So obviously this is up to you. You don't have to reroll, or you can literally take the first 4-star and just accept it. But in terms of value for late game, Haruhime is gonna hands down be the best pick. And until they bring out a unit that can outclass her and outshine her, and it's probably easier to get, she's gonna stay that way. Unfortunately, there are like 160 plus units in the pool at the moment, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments or in the chat. So there is the possibility that you could be re-rolling for ages. Doesn't change the fact, or it doesn't depreciate her value one bit, because if you get her, she's still going to be as useful. When you get her to +3 or MLB, she's still going to be used in basically all of your teams for all content. So there's really no room for argument here. Like, if you don't want to reroll, you don't have to. You can take any of the units on the lower tiers. But if you want the most optimal and the most value for time, money, prison bonds, you name it, anything, Haruhime is the way to go. And that's just it. Now, I've spoke for longer than I wanted to. I'm going to, no Drak Guard will win it. I actually don't know if she's in the rookie gacha. And to be fair, I don't think she doesn't hold a candle to Haruhime for the most part anyway. Anyway, that is going to be everything, guys. Sorry I rambled on for so long. This will probably be on YouTube, God knows when, but that'll be it. I'm actually going to go play Genshin now. I don't want to play this. I didn't want to do this. All right, cool. Let me